Clock by one of the clocks that we have here. Call the meeting order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Garcia. Here. Councilmember Kennedy. Councilmember Valles.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McEachron.
Here.
Mayor Cox.
I'm here. We will not have any public comments because there is no one here to speak to the council at this time. We have a need for a closed session, and therefore, Mr. Attorney, for the closed sessions, we have what items?
Thank you, Mayor Cox. We have 7 closed sessions this evening, 4 of which pertain to existing litigation under Government Code 54956.9 D1. That's 1 for the Airport Authority and 3 items B, C, and F for the City Council. The names of the parties to the litigation are set forth on the agenda, as are the case numbers. The other 3 items, item D is a conference on anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D2. There's 3 potential cases related to that agenda item. Item E is also potential anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D2. There's 1 case related to that item. And then the last item is public employee performance evaluation for the city manager pursuant to Government Code 54957B. To the extent there's reportable action, we would report it at the conclusion of the closed session or at the commencement of the regular session at 6 o'clock.
Are there any questions from the council or clarifications needed? If not, we'll adjourn to executive session at this time. As I indicated when I came in, my apologies for having a late start. We try to have the audience be punctual and hold them to time limits, and we should do the same thing. And we just have some really heavy issues right now in executive session. We'll shortly have a report out of the executive session. As soon as we get the manager and another council person here, we'll call it to order, which should be any minute. Thank you for being patient. We have a quorum. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 6:04. Thank you very much. We just came out of closed session. Before we have a report by the attorney. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Kennedy. Councilmember Valles.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McEachron.
Here.
Mayor Cox.
Here. Can we have a report from the closed session by the city attorney, please?
Thank you, Mayor Cox. We had 7 items for closed session this evening, 4 of which pertain to existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1. The titles of the parties to that litigation, as well as the case numbers, are fully set forth on the agenda. 1 is for the Airport Authority, 3 are for the City Council. There's no reportable action with respect to any of those items. Items D and E on the agenda were anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D2. We have not had the opportunity yet to discuss item E, and I would request that we adjourn this meeting back into closed session. With respect to item D, there is no reportable action. Item F, I think we've already dealt with. Item G is public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code 54957B. Position was the city manager. There is no reportable action with respect to that item either.
Are there any questions of the city attorney? If there are no questions at this time, we will have invocation. Doug Roberts is already on his knees, so we'll give him just a second. You probably didn't know, but you're going to have the invocation for us. And then that followed by our Pledge of Allegiance by our Police Chief, Sam Lucia.
Well, I haven't been at this mic in a while. I'm usually up there, so
Please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you for all that you do in our lives. We thank you for your guidance in all the decisions that we make personally, professionally. Father, we thank you for sending your Son, Jesus Christ, to die for our sins, that we may all go to heaven. Father, we pray all these things in his name. Amen.
Madam City Clerk, I don't have any presentations, resolutions, or proclamations. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Would you then present the agenda to the City Council with any amendment or changes?
There are no revisions to tonight's agenda.
The first item that we have on the City Council agenda is an appeal hearing. City Council has scheduled this appeal hearing. Are there any reason not to continue with the appeal hearing? City Manager or City Attorney?
Mayor Cox, just for the record, I am going to recuse myself from this item to avoid any potential appearance of bias. Our office and my office represented the Planning Commission in connection with consideration of the appeal before the Planning Commission. We took an advocacy position at that point, so we want to avoid any potential conflict. In light of that, we have Mr. Donovan Collier from the Gresham Law Firm here to represent the council with respect to consideration of this appeal. And if it's okay with you, I'd have Donovan come up and take my place.
That would be fine if you would come forward, please. As the independent third party, I'm going to turn this over into your hands to have the appeal, to hear the appeal at this time, and so you have it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, this is an appeal of a Planning Commission determination for the revocation of, or for adoption of Resolution 14028 appeal application, which was adopted by the Planning Commission on April 30th, 2014. This project has, as you all know, a long and storied history. This matter came before the City Council last year, where the City Council did affirm the revocation of business license and conditional use permit for Teasers nightclub, and that matter subsequently went on appeal. The matter came again before the Planning Commission in April, where the Planning Commission again adopted resolution revoking the business license and conditional use permit for the Teasers facility. Subsequently, an appeal was filed, and that appeal was originally to be heard on August 5th of this year. It's been continued several times for a number of reasons, and now comes before this council again. The basis for the revocation found by the Planning Commission was multiple. I mean, the record is substantial in this matter, but based on the operation of the facility, it was determined and found that the Teasers operation constituted a public nuisance, as well as violating a number of Victorville Municipal Code provisions, which supported that determination of revocation. Tonight, as you see in your staff packet, there is draft a resolution affirming and upholding the appeal, as well as one denying the appeal. Now, recently, we have had several conversations that I would like to provide background to this council with Roger Diamond, who represents the appellant in this matter. And I do not believe he will be here this evening, and I do not know whether anybody from the appellant will be here. However, he reported to me that the facility, the Teasers facility, is currently closed and they do not plan to reopen, and that the property is currently in escrow to be sold, to a company that operates Louisiana Cajun Seafood Restaurant. Apparently, they have one facility in Hesperia. Based on my review, the facility looks like a sit-down restaurant with ancillary alcohol sales. They are currently in escrow to, according to Mr. Diamond, to purchase the building and operate it as a Louisiana Cajun seafood operation. He offered at the 11th hour a type of settlement. He has agreed, and the appellant has agreed, to the revocation of his building permit, his business license, as long as the conditional use permit were to remain valid, because he believes that the purchaser will want to come in and utilize the conditional use permit. He also lodges an objection to the revocation of the business license and the conditional use permit to the extent the city will not agree to allow the conditional use permit to remain in place. Also, he's lodged objections to the consideration of any evidence regarding the most recent alleged shootings at the site approximately 10 days, less than 2 weeks ago. And after we were here last on September 16th, there has been another reported incident at the facility, and he has lodge an objection at the consideration of any of that information in regards to action taken by the council this evening. And the record that is in front of the council is replete with evidence, and it is robust, but there really isn't any evidence in there regarding this alleged shooting. So at this point in time, I would advise the council to refrain from relying upon that in any action they take here tonight and base their decision solely on the record as it is before the council. We have a number of public safety individuals who have provided testimony at the Planning Commission hearing, oral testimony as well as written sworn declarations regarding the activities at Teasers, and they are here this evening to answer questions as well as to present additional testimony should the council see fit. With that, I would ask any questions of the council.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. All past testimony and written declarations now become a part of the record without having to hear it again?
That is correct, Mayor.
Questions from the council members? I'll ask a question that may be evident to you but not to me. Teachers has the right at this appeal hearing to make their case verbally. I have no cards or request. I don't know the name or the faces of those individuals who may want to make the request, and I have one card from an individual in the audience that wants to speak on this, which we will, at the conclusion of this particular hearing, we'll allow that individual to speak. But if there is no one to speak on behalf of Teasers, then is it really necessary to talk to all of those individuals that could provide testimony on this case on behalf of we've had testimony and written declaration before?
It is not absolutely necessary, but I think it would be prudent to at least have the individuals come up, confirm their testimony that had been previously given. So with certain of the individuals who are in attendance tonight, I would like to call them up, have them give a brief statement on the record, and we'll start with Brian Waterhouse.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Deputy Waterhouse with the Victorville Police Department. I did, in fact, prepare a declaration as to the investigation and circumstances surrounding Teasers, and I have provided testimony to that. As it stands with the Police Department, we are still in a full support of revoking the business license and CUP for Teasers.
And do you have any changes to your testimony previously given?
No.
Thank you. Is Deputy William Hogan?
Good evening, council members. I also had given a declaration on behalf of the Teasers nightclub, and nothing changes in my declaration. And like my partner said, we still would like the revocation of the business license and CUP to stand.
Thank you. George Duran.
Evening, council members. I also have provided a signed declaration and provided testimony as well regarding this matter in respect to the conditions of the property, both the inside and the outside.
Do you have any changes to that testimony?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Is Timothy Tate here this evening?
My name is Tim Tate. I'm a fire prevention officer for the San Bernardino County Fire Department assigned to the Victorville Division. I have provided testimony and a declaration on behalf of the fire prevention staff up here. There have been no changes. We have attempted several re-inspections based on the corrections we have required, but we have been unable to make contact with anybody at Teasers or make access for inspection.
Thank you. Marvin Wilkie.
Good evening, council members. I'm Deputy Wilkie with the Victorville Police Station. I also prepared a declaration and given testimony and would like that the license be revoked. And there's been no changes to my declaration.
Excellent, thank you. Sergeant Christopher Fisher.
Sergeant Fisher is unable to be present tonight. He's on assignment and out of the county.
Okay, thank you very much. And so those are all the individuals who gave pertinent declarations, and they've all affirmed their declarations here this evening. And just to confirm as well, their declarations are oral testimony at Planning Commission, testimony this evening, as well as the verbatim minutes and record of testimony and other comments submitted to the city are all part of the record here before the council this evening.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the council members? Questions to the hearing officer, please. Yeah.
We have continued this twice.
We have continued this.
Third time we've had this hearing before the council. We were accommodating the attorney for Teasers. Hasn't been at the other two and was not at this one. I'm assuming.
For the
no
record,
one-
that needs to be stated. We have no request or cards from the Teasers organization. I do have a request to speak from Mr. Robert Harriman, and this is an appeal hearing for and against. I don't know if you're speaking for the appellate or what, but your comments, you can come to the microphone, Mr. Harriman.
I would just like to speak as a voice, as a citizen, and I did not give testimony, and I have not changed my mind about anything. I understand it's a legal matter, and really anything I say is just kind of, to say, but I do want everyone to know that I find this place disruptive to our community. I'm tired about reading it in the newspaper. It gives our community a bad name, and it's just degrading and degenerate to the environment we want to live in here in Victorville. It gives the city a bad name. It performs as a magnet for criminals and people who are just looking for trouble. And we certainly don't want our law enforcement officers wasting their time. Not that a shooting isn't wasting their time, but there's plenty of other things to do, especially now that we don't have as many officers as we'd like to have. These people have had ample time to clean up, and they have repeatedly run into problems. I will say, I'm sure that they don't like what happened either. But the fact is, that club and that setup and that environment right there is too close to the housing that's behind it, next to the golf course. And it is just, like I said, a magnet for criminals. So I would, as a voice of the community, say do not renew that business license or whatever you guys are calling it.
Thank you for your comments. From the hearing officer who's conducted this and taken the information, do you have anything to add, or are you finished?
Now, if there are no further questions from the council.
Are there any further questions from the council members?
I just want to make sure I understand. So they are closed right now?
Well, I have not received confirmation. It was reported to me by appellant's attorney that they are no longer in business and their doors are closed.
Can the police confirm that?
Good evening, Chris Borchert. I think it would be difficult to verify that right now because they're typically not open Monday through Thursday anyway. So the shooting just happened last weekend. It's just their attorney telling us that they're closed.
Thank you.
And I would point out that I did do a declaration as well.
I apologize,
Gentlemen.
Chris. I missed you.
No problem. I helped assemble almost all the record with Deputies Hogan and Waterhouse, 570 pages, and went through a lot of that history. Something did change on my declaration. Before it said that their corporation status was surrendered, and now it's currently shown as active on the website. So that did
Shows
change.
active or inactive?
Active.
Active, thank you.
But what does that mean?
It just means that they're able to do business in the state of California under Shadowview Corporation.
Okay, so they're saying, their attorney is saying that they're closed, but as of when? Since the shooting last Saturday?
I was not given a date of closure, just that they were closed and had no intent to reopen and operate as teasers, and that the property was currently in escrow to be sold.
So basically, they could open this Friday or Saturday.
Correct, unless you
we wouldn't have
revoke
any
the
say in
permit
it.
tonight.
Unless you take an action that would not prohibit, unless you take an action tonight that would prohibit them from opening, they could reopen.
So are we going to do that?
That's what I'm going to get to right now.
Staff would definitely recommend that. We agree with the Sheriff's Department that we hope revocation is the action tonight.
Thank you. Hearing all the testimonies in regard to this appeal hearing, I'm going to close the appeal hearing. If there are any questions at this time, we still have the staff and the hearing officer available. If not, this matter then is before the City Council for you to take an action to approve or reject, and you have Resolution 14-028 entitled, City Clerk, I'm sorry, but we want to make sure we do this right. Would you read the title of the resolution?
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Victorville to either uphold or deny the appeal of the appellants George Thanos for Shadowview Corporation and Tom Thanopoulos for New Spectrum Heights, Inc., appealing the revocation of business license number BSL 05-07398 and conditional use permit number 92-049M for the on-site sale of alcoholic beverages, beer, wine, and liquor within 300 feet of a residence for Shadowview Corporation, DBA Teaser Sports Bar and Grill on property located at 14269 7th Street.
My motion is to deny the appeal.
Is there a second?
Okay, what does that mean? That means we're closing them down by doing that? Okay, I give you a second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second?
For the record, Councilmember Valles verbally seconded the motion, but Councilmember Garcia selected.
Oh, I see. I'm looking at it right now. Well, we have 2 seconds. That's good. All right.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, you can proceed.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Ms. Garcia. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. That concludes the appeal hearing. We now go to the public hearing, which is on your agenda, is B1. Public hearing on proposed resolution number 14-065, granting a certificate of public convenience and necessity to R&B Systems, Inc. for a non-emergency medical transportation business. I'm going to open the public hearing on item B1. I do not have any cards. Is there anyone who wants to speak on that item? Seeing no one approach the podium. Any questions? I'm sorry? What did I do? Skip another one again?
No, Mayor Cox, on this particular item, the applicant has not complied as of yet with the insurance requirements.
Has not complied?
That's
Is
correct.
the recommendation of the attorney and the staff to continue it or simply deny it?
I would certainly open the public hearing, take any testimony, and then it's up to the council if you want to close, take an action on it, or continue it for a decision later and give the applicant more time. I don't know if staff has a recommendation on that.
Just because this is, I think, the third time it's been on the agenda, that rather than continuing it to a meeting certain, that you continue it until such time as they have complied with the insurance requirement, and we can agendize it at that point.
I would agree with that as long as it's not to exceed so many days, because they may come in next year and claim it's still an open item.
They could do that. The other option, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because I don't know all the ramifications, could be to deny it without prejudice, possibly. Andre, do you want to?
Certainly, you can do that. The benefit of holding the public hearing right now is that you've done the noticing, et cetera. You wouldn't have to go through that process again. You could just essentially deny without prejudice and allow them to come back and reapply at some point in the future. But I would have the public hearing just to make sure we do that due process.
One final question, Andre. Is there any ability on the part of the council to approve it if they're so inclined, but contingent on them meeting that insurance requirement?
Absolutely, they could do that with the contingency that upon verification by the city manager and city attorney of the appropriate insurance provisions.
I have another alternative suggestion. I'm not sure it's good or not, but that we open the hearing, close the hearing. If no one speaks, I'd like to close the hearing, though.
Absolutely, you could close.
Because all the testimony, they've had adequate time to respond and continue the matter, and that they can come in any time between now and 90 days, and then at the end of 90 days, it'll be back on the agenda for the city council to have a formal denial if they don't comply.
That alternative would also be appropriate because they have full notice of the hearing tonight. They've had an opportunity, so we're not denying their due process.
Was any problem, staff?
No, not at all. This is clearly, it's not a controversial item. I don't know that anyone has ever spoken on one of these other than just a simple request to approve it. These types of companies simply provide hospital visits to patients that's not emergency. They take wheelchair-bound people that can't drive for whatever reason, charge a small fee typically, and take them to doctor's appointments or take them to the hospital.
I realize it's fairly routine, and there's no reason not to approve it, with the exception that they didn't comply. And if they come in and comply, that's fine. I think that's an administrative decision. But if they don't, rather than just leave it there, come back to the city council for.
Doug, did you say it's come to us 3 times?
I saw Marcy hold up 2 fingers, so maybe this is only the second time. I thought it had already been continued twice.
Why?
They simply haven't complied with that last requirement for the insurance, so until they do. But the problem is that these things are advertised ahead of time per state code, and then we have to have the hearing, and then rather than paying additional monies to re-advertise it, we can continue it. But when that doesn't work, sometimes you need a different type of action.
Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing. Wait a minute. Did I open the public hearing yet?
Yes, you did open the
Okay,
hearing.
I did.
Yes.
So the question now, while we're in the public hearing process, and for the record, City Council, my recommendation is, since no one has spoken, that we actually close it rather than keep the public hearing open, because it's a matter of compliance. So I'm going to close the public hearing on the matter. The action at the discretion of the City Council. You may take whatever action you deem appropriate. My suggestion is that it's approved if it'll be approved if they comply with the requirements and submit that to the manager within. You make the decision, council, the next 60 or 90 days. If they don't comply within that period, that it's re-agendized for the City Council to, my recommendation, revoke, so it doesn't just keep going. And they give notice of that, so they have adequate notice of their requirements.
Insurance is just about the easiest thing in the world to buy, isn't it, Ryan? I mean, it's not like it's
Pretty
difficult.
much. I think 60 days ought to be long enough.
I think
so.
30 days ought
Well,
to be fine.
Yeah.
I'd make the motion
Split the difference. You know,
contingent.
30, 90, 60.
I don't care. 60?
And of course, as long as they comply, then
So the motion then would be to grant the certificate upon verification of compliance with the insurance requirements as approved by city manager and city attorney.
otherwise it needs to come back to us to vote to deny it.
Sure.
Yep.
60 days.
60 days.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Ms. Baez. Motion carries unanimously.
Item B2 is another public hearing. The subject is proposed ordinance number 2325, amending sections 2.28.170, parenthesis A in parenthesis, in parenthesis C in parenthesis, and 2.28260 of Chapter 2.28 of the Victorville Municipal Code to ensure compliance with state prevailing wage laws for public works projects exceeding the cost threshold specified in California Labor Code Section 1782. One of the staff members mentioned to me in the hallway, we have no real authority to not do this. Is that true, Mr. Attorney?
Essentially, if you did not comply with this, you jeopardize the ability to get any kind of state financial aid or funding on projects that have any kind of state involvement. So General Cities are subject to this already as a charter city. You previously had the ability on certain projects to minimize the impacts of prevailing wage payments. This is basically the legislature closing any kind of loophole with respect to that. So yes, you essentially have no choice unless you're willing to jeopardize possible state funding.
All right. So it's an action of the state legislature that extends a prevailing wage issue to charter cities.
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to open the public hearing on item B2. I have no cards. I have no one approaching the podium. We have no additional testimony. I'm going to close the public hearing. Council members, if there are no questions, we're ready for action of the council.
I need to read the title of the ordinance, Mr.
I'm sorry.
Mayor.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Ordinance number 2325, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Victorville, amending sections 2.28.170A through C and 2.28.260 of Chapter 2.28 of the Victorville Municipal Code to ensure compliance with state prevailing wage laws for public works projects exceeding the cost thresholds specified in California Labor Code Section 1782.
For adoption, waive further reading.
Is there a second? Motion by Mr. McEachran, second by Mr. Kennedy to waive further reading and introduce the ordinance. Motion carries unanimously.
Next item is item B3, public hearing for the Victorville Water District Board. This council sets as the Water District Board.
Mayor Cox, I would recommend that Councilmember Baez recuse herself from this item only to avoid any appearance of bias. I'm not sure she has any direct conflict here, but given her position with the VVWRA, it would make sense to avoid any possible appearance of bias.
And before I open the public, thank you, Mr. Attorney, and before I open the public hearing, we have, at the conclusion, we have ordinance number, Water District number 10, I won't read it this time, urgency ordinance, and we also have Victorville Water District resolution. And Mr. City Manager, would you explain for the record why we have regular ordinance and an emergency or an urgency ordinance that's identical?
It has to do with timing. We had, as staff, had been working with the Regional Water Board on this issue, and with a little bit of surprise and shock to us, they upped the requirement or shortened the time frame, or essentially made it imperative that we adopt an ordinance. It took a little bit of creativity with both our Director of Public Works and City Attorney working together to figure out how we can get an ordinance adopted that met that requirement of the Regional Water Quality Board. Ultimately, that's why you have both on there. You have an urgency ordinance that will take effect immediately and could extend for as much as 45 days, although it will be replaced with the regular ordinance that, after 30 days after the second reading, I believe it is. So it was out of a abundance of necessity based on a bit of a change in tack from one of our sister agencies.
Thank you, Doug. I felt that explanation is necessary for the record because an urgency ordinance will take place immediately if adopted by the council, where the regular ordinance could, after the hearing, is first reading and introduction, and then, 30 days later, second reading and adoption.
Second reading usually at the next meeting, and
At the
then
next
effective 30 days after the second reading.
Effective 30 days thereafter. So the urgency ordinance, if approved by the council, takes effect and literally makes it effective from now as we go forward until the ordinance becomes effective in approximately 40 days.
45 to,
45.
yes.
Okay. At this time, I'm going to open the public hearing. And is there any good explanation for the audience on what the public hearing? You heard Doug's explanation. These are very long. I'm not going to read them. Is there any questions from council? I have no cards. No one is coming to speak on that at the podium. I will close the public hearing. Council?
I'll read the title of, sorry.
City Clerk, I don't know how you want to read those, take them separately, or?
Probably there needs to be a vote on
They
each
should,
one
each one should
individually.
be voted on separately. It'd be easiest for the record,
That's why I
yes.
asked Council to
Mr. Mayor, just one question. Doug, do you have any idea why they took so long to let us know about that requirement? I mean, Lahontan.
I do not know. No. I'm sure they're busy.
Okay.
They're still our judge and jury, so I'm going to be very guarded in what I say.
I'll read ordinance number BWD-010, an ordinance of the Board of Directors of the Victorville Water District adopting a pretreatment program and waste discharge permitting requirements for users of the district's industrial wastewater treatment plant and works located adjacent to the Southern California Logistics Airport to be codified in new chapter 10.08 of the Victorville Municipal Code.
For adoption, waive further reading.
Motion by Mr. McEachran, second by Mr. Kennedy to waive further reading and introduce the ordinance. Motion carries with Ms. Vyas absent. And urgency ordinance number VWD-011, an urgency ordinance of the Board of Directors of the Victorville Water District adopting a pretreatment program and waste discharge permitting requirements for users of the district's industrial wastewater treatment plant and works located adjacent to the Southern California Logistics Airport to be codified in new chapter 10.08 of the Victorville Municipal Code. Motion by Mr. McEachran, second by Ms. Garcia, to waive further reading and adopt the urgency ordinance. Motion carries with Ms. Vyas absent.
Adopt the resolution separately.
Yes. That I don't need to read the title of.
Third item, Victorville Water District Resolution number 14-012.
Motion by Mr. McEachran, second by Mr. Kennedy to adopt the resolution. Motion carries with Ms. Vyas absent.
Thank you. Item C, which is C1 through C17, is a consent item. Any questions, or is any request by any member of the council to pull any of the consent items? If not, they all can be approved by one motion.
Motion by Mr. McEachran, second by Ms. Garcia to adopt. Motion carries unanimously.
Written communications. I have some cards. I want to make sure I get those. Under D1, under written communications, request the City Council approve the award of a construction contract to Victor Concrete in the not to exceed amount of $87,000 for concrete repairs and or replacement services for fiscal year 2014-15. Before you take an action, I have a request from Mr. Robert Harriman to speak on item D1.
Oh, I'm a little bit disappointed. Number one, the contractor's out of our area. Why cannot we hire contractors from our valley? There's too many wages in construction lately that don't even get spent around here. All the highway projects, probably 80% of all those employees are from out of the area. And with ample amount of concrete contractors here in the Victor Valley, I'm not too sure if it's a good idea. I mean, there's cities in the newspaper and everywhere all the time that are giving businesses incentives to do business in their city. And we're going to award a concrete project. There's plenty of concrete contractors, including myself, here in the Victor Valley. I was not given an invitation to bid this, which kind of aggravates me. Secondly, is this a specific project or is it a maintenance contract? I know you can't answer my questions, I guess, while I'm up here. But I would request that the contract be denied and at least give another shot at some of the local contractors, including High Desert Concrete Incorporated.
Thank you. Director of Public Works or the City Manager will respond to.
Sure. This, regarding the easier question of whether it's a specific project, this is for projects that come up. There is no specific project. That's why the pricing is based on linear foot or square foot. So this is for any small projects that we need throughout the year. The RFPs, the RFB, was posted to the city website and sent to 19 contractors. I'm assuming those, as well as the Chamber of Commerce and the plan rooms, I'm assuming those are contractors who have indicated to purchasing that they're interested in these types of contracts. There are representatives here from finance who I'm sure would be happy to talk with Mr. Harriman about making sure that he or how he can get on those bid sheets so that if anything having to do with concrete comes up, if he's on that sheet, it's for a term of 1 year, he would get notified. Obviously, I don't tonight have any information on whether or not he's on that list and was missed or those details. With regard to Victor Concrete, I personally don't know their location. I do know that our purchasing code allows for the consideration of local vendors and gives them preference up to a certain percentage as well as a certain dollar amount. So I would have to assume that that code would have been applied to this contract as it is to all bids that come in. I don't know if that answers all of his questions. I'd be happy to meet with him later. Finance could meet with him to clarify any of those issues.
Well, no, we want to engage in debate. We still have questions from the other council members. I'll get back to you. Be patient. Other council members, any comments or questions?
How can we have a repair contract for a not-to-exceed amount? Does that mean we only intend to do $87,000 worth of repairs?
We intend to do less than $87,000, and if it goes above that, that's the amount that's been budgeted. So if it ever looks like it's going to go above that, it would have to come back to the city council.
Would those be rebid, or would this PO just extend to?
This is for relatively small projects. If we have a larger project, we would bid that separately in order to make sure that we have the absolute best pricing. So that's an area where I want to make sure that Mr. Harriman is on the bid list for anything concrete related.
I know that a lot of times contractors locally are disqualified because they don't have the bond insurance and they don't meet the specifications. Are we asking a lot of local contractors? Is that why we're not getting a good group of them?
We ask the same thing of all the contractors. I wouldn't be able to answer whether or not it's a lot or not.
How do we determine trying to keep it local?
Perhaps someone from finance has the exact details, but as I recall, it's a 1% of the contract. So essentially, if a local contractor is more than 1% higher than the low bid or less than 1% higher than the low bid, it would actually be awarded locally. And then there's also a hard dollar cap, but I don't know what that cap is.
I have a question. When I read this, I wondered. It was posted on the city website and sent to 19 contractors, but I don't know where physically these contractors were located. I wondered how many were in the Victor Valley or the high desert. And in reading it, it may be here and I've just missed it. My apologies if that's true. If not, I am curious as to how many people in the desert or the Victor Valley received that request for a bid or an RFB. The other thing that is really of a concern, I mean, this is a fairly small amount, and you have to be available all during the year when you're contacted by city staff to make the repairs. But we're still in somewhat a recession. We have a lot of unemployment. And for this to be posted and sent to 19 contractors and only receive one bid, it's kind of a concern. And so, Mr. Harriman, I'll get to you as soon as I have a staff member or the city manager to attempt to answer that. Hope my question wasn't too broad. Maybe there's no answer why there was only one bid.
Well, I don't know the answer as to whether or not or why there was only one bid. I'm assuming that the 19 contractors were those that were on that bid list with purchasing based on the type of project that it is.
All right. Just one comment, Mr. Harriman, because we kind of have to avoid getting into debates on this issue.
I'm not sure. I was on that list, but I was gone in Iowa for 2 weeks, so was unable to bid on it.
Oh, okay.
So we can say I'm got a little ploy here for more time, I guess. I mean, I'm sure that's obvious to everybody, but I probably would estimate that 17 of the contractors were from the Victor Valley. I would assume. I used to be on that list a few years back. But I know the city has to do what they have to do. But 6-7 years ago, it wasn't required for me to have a surety bond, and several other things that the city is now requiring to bid this work. Okay, I understand it's prevailing wage, Davis-Bacon wages, and which makes it rather expensive for the city. I know you guys discussed, we had an agenda item here at today's meeting about prevailing wage and us being a charter city. If I understand that correctly, as a charter city, if the cost, the threshold isn't met, then the prevailing wages will not apply?
I think the attorney is probably better at answering that with all the changes.
Basically, the threshold's $25,000, so anything less than that, you might have a chance of avoiding prevailing wage. However, the state of California is trying to apply it to everything. So,
and yeah, they don't want to see that, or they're going to deny other monies to the city.
The other issue that we have to look at is whether or not it's using state or federal funds. If the funds that are being used on these projects are state or federal funds, then the prevailing wages apply at dollar number one.
Absolutely. And I'm also shocked that you guys didn't receive one proposal. I mean, you only received one, not one from up here. And like I said, I was on vacation. If this can be tabled, I'd like the chance I mean, one bid is not very many. I would say that the city get at least 3.
I don't know legally I would love for you to bid, Robert. I don't know legally, considering that this bid has been opened, it's now visible to the public. If we were going to redo it, we would have to essentially, I believe, reject all of the bids and rebid it.
That is absolutely correct, because otherwise now, unfortunately, Mr. Harriman knows what the other bid is, and
Right.
it's unfair to the people that already
Okay.
bid.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
all right.
Council members, what is your desire?
Motion by Ms. Garcia, second by Mr. Kennedy.
That is a motion to
To
approve
award.
staff recommendation.
Motion carries unanimously.
Item 2, submitted by the city manager, St. Mary's Medical Center Facility Contract, St. Mary's Medical Center Electricity Services Agreement, Southern California Edison Wholesale Distribution Load Interconnect Facilities Agreement. Any questions of Mr. Robertson?
Yes. Doug, I was hoping to be able to meet with you before the meeting so we could have a discussion on this. But my concern is the rumors that are flying around about this facility as to whether or not it's even going to be built, or if it's just going to be an emergency room with a couple of beds added on. The scope of the project seems to be changing on a daily basis based upon things I'm hearing from within the St. Joseph organization as well as outside of the St. Joseph organization. And you're asking this council to approve in excess of a $2 million expenditure in the hopes that they'll build what they have proposed. I really want to make sure that before we approve such an agreement that there are some teeth that would allow us to not move forward on such an expenditure. I'm all for them building. I think they need to build what they've proposed. I understand that economics may have changed that and that they may no longer wish to build that. And if that's in fact the case, us paying for all of this infrastructure to be put in to serve a facility that'll never be built just does not make any sense. So,
Yeah, let me provide a 30,000-foot level view and then ask our energy consultant, Lynn Viejo, to come up and, I guess, confirm what I'm saying, but then also add any details that I may have missed. This project is one that we've been working on for about 3 years, trying to gain another customer to our municipal utilities. The contract tonight puts in place a connection fee that the St. Mary St. Joseph organization will have to pay the majority of sometime during this fiscal year. It's at our discretion exactly when they're billed. I'm sure Mr. Viejo has had conversations about when that would happen. But at some point during this current fiscal year, they will have to pay a connection fee. That's their part of the bargain. And we would continue with some engineering work, some study work that is at-risk dollars. But ultimately, the big payments, the million-plus payments to Southern California Edison to actually install this equipment don't occur until the middle of 2016. So we've got roughly 12 months after they've made a payment to us for connection fees that we can see satisfactory progress. We've had a very good working relationship with the hospital, with the organization building the hospital, and I'm sure that will continue. The discussions will continue. If they're making changes, then we would have the opportunity to change, if necessary, change the type of equipment that's put in. So I understand your concern about the risk. The risk is not the $2.5 million, but there certainly is some dollars at risk. With that, Lynn, can you come up and talk specifically about any exit provisions or termination provisions, when we would have that opportunity to exercise those, should we need to do it, understanding that nobody wants that?
Please give your name for the record.
My name is Len Viejo. I'm with Astrom Utility Services. Mayor and council members, it's a pleasure to be here and talk about the project. As Doug said, we've worked on it for over 3 years. That's when we initially reached out to them, told them about the capabilities of the city and what we could do for them. And they were interested in that. They had some hurdles to overcome. We worked with them in overcoming those hurdles and reached an agreement on two things. One, the facilities contract, that is, what facilities would be needed to be put on site. That's a contract before you today. And secondly, we worked on then what we call an electricity services agreement, which is the pricing of the services that we'll provide to them. Coincident with that, we also did a contract with Southern California Edison. They did a study and said for us to have the capabilities to serve them, they would have to improve their facilities, and they gave us the cost to do that. With those three pieces in place, we then had to structure them of how the money would be paid to us and how much money we would pay to Southern California Edison. St. Mary's will make two payments to us, one payment for $347,000 and a second payment for $225,000 for a total payment of $572,000. That first payment will be made 30 days after we bill them. Once the contract is, they've already signed the agreement. Once that contract is approved, we could literally bill them the next day for $347,000. If they don't pay that in 30 days, we can terminate the agreement. Coincident with that, we have obligations to Southern California Edison. We initially have to pay them a deposit of $126,000. That amount will be offset against payments that we need to make to them, as the city manager has said, in 2016. Those are our financial obligations. I can't speak to whether or not the project will go forward or not go forward. What I can say, if it doesn't go forward, we don't pay Southern California Edison. They only pay Edison for the, they will not do the work until we pay them, and we are responsible for the work that they do.
Question.
Certainly.
In reading page 1, it refers to the electrical services for phase 1.
Yes.
Are the costs that are outlined for the whole project or just phase 1?
Phase 1. But we actually have more capacity than to serve just phase 1. Phase 1 has got 3 facilities, a hospital, medical office building, and an ACC building. Ryan, the sales of this facility would increase our sales by about 25%. One of the things that Janelle Davidson, who kind of oversees the administrative aspects, does a 10-year forecast. We have this in the 10-year forecast. It puts us in a position to make these payments as well as to meet the financial obligations of the utility over the next 10 years.
Yeah, and don't misunderstand me. I think that this is a good thing for Victorville Municipal Utility Services, as we refer to as VMUS. I think it's an appropriate thing for our utility to be doing with a new user coming into town, and specifically a hospital being built. I think my frustration and my issue, as well as I think should be everybody on this council, in light of the fact that we've waived development impact fees for them and done everything we can bend over backwards to help them move this project forward, is why are we hearing these rumors? Why are we hearing these things that they're not going to build? And the fact that they don't have anybody here tonight is somewhat concerning to me. I want someone in this chambers, I want someone answering the question, are they going to build what they've proposed, or are they changing it? And if they're changing it, what are they changing it to? Because you've built this agreement, you've built this cost structure, you've built the pricing mechanisms, all based upon what they have proposed and we have approved, as well as the state of California and OSHPD has approved. And for all of this talk going on in the background, press is looking at this as well, going, are you going to build? You drive by that, I drive by that, that project area almost daily, and there's nothing going on. And I really would like an answer to that question. I think the community deserves an answer to that question. Are they going to build it, or are they not going to build it? Or if they're going to build some sort of version of it, what is it going to be? So from my perspective, this is not about us providing them power. I think it's an appropriate use of our municipal utility, I'm more than willing to move forward on that part. But I would like an answer to my question as to whether or not they're going to actually build it. And if they're not, I want to know that as well. Because if they're not, we shouldn't even be having this conversation. Obviously, if they're not going to pay us $500,000+. But if they're going to build something less than what they're proposing, then I think that $500,000 would be discounted somewhat as well. This whole agreement would change. So with all those questions out there, it kind of concerns me that the council would approve such an agreement that would put us on the hook potentially for north of $2 million.
Mr. City Manager, is there any upside or downside for continuing this for a couple of weeks, or does this need an action tonight?
I wouldn't say that it needs an action tonight. We would recommend an action tonight so that we can get that clock started. That will help solidify their answer, I think. In regards to the Mayor Pro Tem's concerns, based on the issue you raised to me a little bit earlier today, the same issue, I fully intend to reach out to their chief executive to bring these concerns to him and provide an answer to the council and to the public to the extent that they're willing to give that. I'd be more than happy if one or two council members want to be engaged in that as well. It may provide more weight, or if you want to leave it to me, I'm okay with that too. I think my opinion is that we have the protections in place. They've already signed the agreement. My preference would be that we get the approval tonight, sign the agreement, and get that clock started so that we can have a final answer as to whether or not they're going to pay.
Do you feel confident if the council approves this, the clock starts, and there's a hitch somewhere along the line that we will not invest money, and we can stop the process?
Absolutely.
I think Ryan's questions need to be answered. I would like to have an update from the St. Mary's folks as soon as we can get it. But based on your explanation, I don't see a downside to approving this. And you know, I don't want to give credence to rumors that may only be rumors, and show some sort of faltering support for that project. So I think I'd be in favor.
If the project is moving forward as planned, we definitely want this tonight. Yeah. We need to get moving.
Any further questions or to Mr. Limbieo?
I just want to make sure that, okay, we approve this tonight. We won't lose money if something happens and St. Mary's does back out.
We won't lose much money. There is a little bit of engineering work. There is a little bit of study work that has to continue to move.
How much money?
Lynn, do you have a number on that?
I don't. Can I say a couple other things and then answer that? Or to answer the question, there's a payment to Southern California Edison for $126,000.
So we would lose $126,000 if something does go awry.
As I said to you, once the contract's been signed, we can bill St. Mary's for $347,000. They have to pay that bill in 30 days. They don't pay that bill in 30 days, then we're not going to make the payment to Southern California Edison.
So we wouldn't lose that money.
And
we will only make that payment to Edison upon receipt of those connection fees from St. Mary's.
So we will not lose any money.
Not anymore. We have paid a few fees for study work from Edison that's already long gone.
It's already gone.
Yeah, but we won't pay additional fees at this point until we receive those connection fees.
I would like to see a letter to the council from St. Mary's with their intent answering all of Ryan's questions. I think these are very good questions, and I am concerned now that he brought it up that there is no St. Mary's representative here, and nothing seems to be happening over there. So they need to get to do some PR work and figure this out.
Yeah, just so the council is aware, I'm okay with approving this tonight. I think you've adequately answered my questions with respect to, clawback provisions and our ability to unwind this should we need to. It's just frustrating.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have such a great project. We are all excited about it. We all look forward to seeing it move forward. We've actually seen them do a ton of work out there with respect to underground and infrastructure, and it's just completely come to a standstill. I want to know what's going on. I think we deserve that in this city. We've been told we're going to get a 128-bed hospital. I believe that's the number. If that's not what we're going to get, we need to know. That's all I'm saying. Lynn, I think you guys have done a great job in putting together this agreement. I'm willing to approve it tonight.
I agree with Mr. Geckren's comments. You've done a good job. But we have been, the city has become more cautious in our financial dealings, and this is just the way we're going to be in the future. So we have to have those assurances, I think. And Mr. Robertson, you've heard the concerns of the council. So with that understood, we can move forward with a motion of the council.
Motion by Ms. Vyas, second by Mr. Kennedy to approve. Motion carries unanimously.
I will reach out to them tomorrow.
We are at the public comment section near the end of the agenda. Under the public comment section, I have 2 cards. I will call the names in the way I received them. And once again, these are items where individual can come to the microphone and speak. We do not engage in debate. If we were going to give information and try to answer the questions, it would have been an agendized item, and it's not. Therefore, if it had been agendized, maybe other people would have come to hear the question and hear the answers. But we do seriously want to hear from those individuals. We will take the questions, and then we will get back to you later if it requires an answer from the council or the staff. And please keep those comments to 3 minutes, since we cannot debate them and it's not a hearing process. The first card is Deborah, Germany. Up, please.
Good evening. I have the unfortunate pleasure of being next door to a property that has been abandoned since 2009 by Bank of America. We have been making several reports to code enforcement, police, Bank of America, and nothing has been done. It has now been burned twice. And most recently here, my dog was attacked by a swarm of bees that apparently had a hive at the home, and he's dead. My mother was also attacked by the bees trying to save the dog. I don't know what's going on, but in all of the times that code enforcement has come out, they've placed liens against the property, and I've asked, when are you going to take possession of the property? I have been told we take possession when the bank fixes the property. They're not going to fix the property. It's been tagged, it's been burned, there's trash inside, the kids are still going in and out, and they're using that particular property as a quote-unquote shortcut to hop over the wall into the Villa apartments to do whatever they're doing and hop back over. Something has to be done. We can't keep dealing with this. It's bringing down our neighborhood, and it feels like nobody cares. Is there anything that can be done?
We will, there are 3 different entities that can look into this. I assure you they will look into it, and you'll hear back from us.
Mr. Mayor, actually, I know law prohibits the council from engaging in discussion, but if I could ask, ma'am, is this on Wild Rose?
It is.
It is, okay. I believe this is the individual who contacted the newspaper earlier today or maybe yesterday, and it's frustrating for the public and it's frustrating for the staff and code enforcement that the law prevents us from sharing a lot of information due to privacy rules. But let me read for you and for the council and for the public the response that went to the newspaper, and it provides some of the answers. That's the only reason why I want to do this. It says, this property is on our demolition list and was part of our large contractor job walk last week, which consisted of 8 other properties as well. Bids are due late next week, and we anticipate starting the demolition project by the first week of November. We also took action to remove a dry tree located on the east side of the property to reduce the possibility of fire. We are aware of the beehive and have issued a work order to an exterminator to abate the beehive. It's not going to change what's happened in the past, and it's unfortunate that staff's been working on this for months to try to abate these things, but privacy rules don't allow us to share that with the complainant a lot of times. But there is action happening. We have heard you, and hopefully within the next 30 days.
This is the second time, sir, though, that it's been burned. 2 years ago it was burned, and I asked then to please have it demolished. No one did anything. I even asked about having the tree removed then. No one did anything. It wasn't until this last inferno where it almost engulfed the house right next door to it on the west side that anybody listened to do anything.
Yeah, and over the last 12 months, this current council has engaged with staff to change the direction of code enforcement to get more proactive rather than reactive, which is what the last council had expected. So I can't speak to exactly what happened 2 years ago, but I do want to assure you that it is being taken care of this time. Apologize for the inconvenience.
We know who's taking possession of the property afterwards?
That I'm not sure of, but I'm sure code enforcement can be back in touch with you to answer that question. But it will be demolished sometime in the next 30 to 45 days, it appears.
Is there any type of action that can be taken with the apartments to increase the wall that's back there so that we're not having constant traffic?
Yeah, at this point, rather than engaging as part of a public comment.
Oh, that's my last question.
No, that's fine. I'll have someone from the development department speak with you after the meeting to talk about those remaining issues.
Thank you.
Thank you for the next card for the public comment, Dorothy Miller.
Hello, Mayor and council members. I'm a little disturbed. Years ago, we went into the city of Victorville. They took care of us. Well, now all of a sudden, we're not getting taken care of. The city, we have trash pickup. We have paid for lighting, street lighting we'll never get. But all of a sudden now, we can't grade the road. And we had a gentleman go to the hospital 3 times in less than a week and a half in an ambulance going out this dirt road, bounce, 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 bounce. And there's a fence in the way. The road's supposed to have been dedicated. Well, if it's dedicated, there shouldn't be anything in the road, right? Well, there's a fence in the road. That can stay there. I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about getting the roads graded. We get the water coming off of Sycamore, running down through there. No cars or anything get through when the water runs because it's not going to be graded anymore. Now, this is not right. There's people out there, and especially the older ones, like us, that do need help. And if the city's not going to help us, what are we going to do? You know, what are you going to do? I mean, I felt so sorry. That man had to go in 3 times to the hospital. The ambulance one time couldn't find him. They went over to the other storage place down the road behind there, but they finally found him, just about almost too late. But we need some help. We need this city to look at the people, not just the money, because those roads need to be graded. I'm not saying every day, every week, once a month, twice a month, whatever it takes. There's not that much traffic on them, except for the little squirrely kids that decide to run through there and spin around. But it needs to be taken care of, and the city needs to look at the people out there. And I'd really appreciate seeing something done, and at least get where the main houses are, get the roads graded. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. I have no other cards of individuals that want to address items of the interest of the public. E2, report from the city manager.
Just one. I hope everyone enjoyed the Fall Festival, the Spice of Life, last weekend. I know staff had a good time. I want to thank all the staff who participated in that, and especially the ones that worked on it for so long to make it a success. It's always difficult. We don't have a ticket counter. We don't have a turnstile that people walk through. So we take a stab at how many people were there. Staff has indicated I was there for several hours. I know most of the council were there at some point. And we really had a nice steady flow of events and events traffic and children playing on all the bounce houses and rock walls and things that were brought in free of charge. So in the future, staff right now is talking about trying to maybe expand that to not necessarily the Fall Festival, but to have more activities for our youth, more activities for our residents, to bring them to the Civic Center to celebrate being a resident of Victorville, really. Don't have any details on that yet, but hopefully next year we can find a way to offer more to our residents along those regards. One item that I was meant to speak on at that event, I gave a few little city updates on some projects that are upcoming. I was wearing a pink hat. I don't normally wear pink hats, but I was wearing a pink hat. It was actually a Public Works hat. This year, our Public Works staff decided that in support of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, all of the guys and gals that you see in orange and brown and maybe some in blue, and I don't know about green, but all those folks that are out working on the streets, if you notice them in the month of October wearing a pink hat, just like the NFL does, that's the reason for it. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Reports from the council members. I'll start on my left. Councilmember Garcia. Cochran.
Nothing.
Bias.
A few meetings ago, I had brought up that the condition of Walmart and some of the big box stores were really in bad condition as far as trash. My recent trip to Walmart in Victorville was quite disturbing. There was a lot of very scary-looking characters wandering around the parking lot, pandering, looking in cars, opening up car doors, and I didn't see any security anywhere. I didn't feel safe, and the parking lot was filthy as well as the store. And I'm wondering, my last request a few meetings ago, I had asked if code enforcement is enforcing the big box stores to clean up. And we were supposed to get a report. I never got anything back, so I was wondering what's happening with that.
I know that code enforcement has been out there. The times that we have been out there, they have immediately come out to clean up, but it appears to be an ongoing issue. We'll be back in contact with them, as well as reaching out perhaps with the Sheriff's Department to talk about any potential security issues.
And I noticed that the pandering in Victorville is just off the hook. It's everywhere you go. You can't put gas. You can't walk into a store and get approached by 3 or 4 people asking for money, and everybody has a sad story. And it seems like the homeless is getting out of control. The riverbed looks an absolute mess. I don't think the HOPE program's working very well. I just want to know an update from the police department on what's going on, how many people have increased in the riverbeds, and it just seems like the other cities don't seem to have as much homeless as Victorville, but they're all coming here. So I'm wondering, what can we do, and what are we doing to deal with this issue? And these are not just homeless people. These are the AB 109ers. These are criminals. And they're the ones that are approaching our residents and asking for money. And it's very scary for the elderly and young people and people with kids that are out there. I mean, you cannot go anywhere at night without being frightened. And I don't like that. I don't like being a council member in the city of Victorville and feeling that way myself. And I can imagine what other people are going through.
Thank you for those comments. I'd like to refer, if okay with you, to refer that to the city manager. I was in discussion with a public official from another city in the valley and indicated that it seemed like we had more than our share. And the individual's answer was, yes, of course, as long as you keep enabling them and giving away food and shelter, which we don't. That's why they're there. I'm not sure if that's true. I don't know how many organizations are adding to our problems by trying to do the right thing, but I understand why the comment was made, and I'd just like some information from staff at a future date, please. Councilmember Kennedy.
Just wanted to add a couple of comments to Doug's remarks. That I spent the whole day at the Fall Festival. It was very well done. Want to compliment staff for a very nice job. And I have to tell you, the Ballet Folklorico was the best that I've ever seen. Those kids were just wonderful. And there were 3 guys doing, I don't know what the dance was, but they had machetes in their hands, and those machetes were going in all kinds of directions. And I was impressed.
We do get a nice wide variety of acts celebrating that spice of life, but it was not a competition. So
no, they were wonderful.
No further comments? That concludes the actions. Do we go back in executive session or not?
Mayor Cox, we do. We have item, I think, is it? Yes, we need to go back. There's one additional item. It is item D that we need to item E that we need to discuss. And to the extent there's reportable action, we will come back and report that at the conclusion of the closed session.
All right, thank you. Thank you, audience, very much for attending this meeting. Hope you've learned something, like what you see. If you have questions, contact us. We're here to help you. We're here to serve the public. We appreciate your input, and we will be adjourning to executive session. Thank you very much, and have a good evening, everyone.
The closed session of the City Council concluded at 7:56 p.m., and there was no reportable action.